Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. And welcome to the latest Air Cargo News webinar brought to you in partnership with Maersk Air Cargo. My name is Damien Brett. I'm editor of Air Cargo News, and I'm going to be moderating today's session, which is on emerging trends in air cargo for 2024. Joining me on the panel today with a great selection of people. I'll introduce everyone. We've got Marcus from AP Muller Maersk, who is Regional Head of Air Freight Asia Pacific. We have Celine Orcard from consultancy Change Horizon. She's the founder and managing director. We've got Preven Hansen, also from AP Muller Maersk. He's global head of growth enablement and solution design air product. So great job title, by the way, Preven. Impressive. And we also have Neil van der Waal, Chief Air Freight Officer at data provider Zenita. Later on in the session, you'll have a chance to ask some questions, and you can do that at the bottom of your screen. You should see a Q&A box, and you can just type your questions in there. I would ask if you could specify who you'd like your question to go to, and also perhaps give it 10 minutes or so before you start asking your questions, just so you can see how the conversation's going and and what we're going to be talking about. But before we hand over to you for some questions, we're going to have a discussion amongst ourselves. So let's get things going. And I think the big question on everyone's lips at the moment, given the demand declines over the last couple of years and the uncertainty in the world at the moment, is what the demand perspective will look like next year, and also supply as well. Neil, given your kind of expertise in data, perhaps you could give us your perspective on how the year ended, because I think that will give us some clues as to how next year will go. And then also, your perspective on next year in terms of supply and demand.
Big questions. Let me try to keep it short. Demand is not great, and no secret. The global economy is not great. The comparisons that we see year over year compared to last year are becoming more positive. But that's mainly because we saw quite a weak Q4 last year. So the year-over-year comparisons are a little bit misleading in the sense that they might show an uptick, but they don't. It was just because last year was weak. Looking ahead, I don't think global consumers will be spending more on goods next year than they did this year. We saw a transition from goods to services as a result of things opening up again. We saw revenge travel, people getting on the plane again after many years of restricted travel. I think their personal kitty is becoming, if I read the articles correctly, emptier. There was a lot of free money, or more or less free money, floating around with interest rates going up, and it's becoming more costly. The support programs are running out, so I don't think we'll see much more spending, maybe a little bit, but marginal. Then the question is, how will it be moved, by air or by ocean? And there I see a tendency, firstly, from a environmental perspective, and I know some of the colleague panelists will touch upon that in more detail. But I see people becoming more critical with regards to air freight. And I also see that the ocean reliability has improved, which is for me one of the most important factors on what the air freight market will do. If ocean got its act together, we have quite a few people here from Maersk, then there's less need for air. We have some very strong correlations in that. Question will be what the increased competition will do on the ocean, and with the block exemption not being extended. Bringing that all together, we think flat 1-2% demand growth, but not much more than that. There's a lot of hope / expectation that Q3 might see an uptick next year, but until that, I think it's going to be, from a demand perspective, doldrums.
Yeah, and do you think on the sort of supply side, have you got kind of any what do you think there? Do you think it's going to be a tight capacity situation, or I'm guessing if demand's down or will be weak growth anyway, that it shouldn't be a problem getting capacity?
We think that capacity, because of the especially Asia Pacific, passenger flights have not returned, let's say, to pre-COVID levels in several markets. So that is still, waiting to happen again. Will be gradual, but we expect it to continue in 24. So yeah, I would not be surprised, despite that people might take out old freighters and push back on conversions and maybe push back on new freighter deliveries. I would not be surprised if capacity would grow a little bit more than demand, and therefore we would not see a tighter market in general. There will always be issues, whether it's a snowstorm or a volcano or something else or a product launch. But on a global perspective, I don't see that the demand supply ratio would strengthen in the coming quarters.
Preven, yeah, perhaps you could give us some kind of perspective on what your customers are telling you. You expecting another kind of quiet year on the demand front?
Well, being in air freight is never really a quiet year, because there are spikes and valleys all the time due to the nature of the product. No doubt, also echo what Neil has said, that the market, of course, has been slow. It has been improvement in this year, and also the demand from customers has been improving towards the second or latter part of this year. Next year, I'm pretty much aligned with Neil as well. What the demand is, maybe 1-2%, but we see a big difference from a vertical or geographical point of view. Something what we have experienced on, especially the last couple of months, is within fashion, which basically traditional allowed during pandemic had very little air freight, has surged again, not across the world, but in certain markets like from China to UK, we've seen a quite big spike, while the Trans-Pacific has been quite low. So we see also that the tightening inventories from individual clients is pushing more air mode. So it's not as an industry as much, but individual customers within individual verticals, within individual trades, you see a spike. So it's not an industrial general progress. So it's very different customer to customer, vertical to vertical, and trades. What we're seeing, of course, in Maersk is quite a little more optimistic view, but that's also because we have been bringing the Maersk Air Cargo to market last year. We have improved our positioning in the airspace, so we're seeing much more activity. So that might not be aligned with market. So we seem to be quite busy. But what we're seeing is definitely there are movements, not massively general cargo. It's more maybe e-commerce driving it. So it's very, very selective. General surge in air freight demand overnight, likely not. Everyone says second part of next year. But of course, this is everyone is saying. So we have to see, because the economic situation, the inflationary, the interest, there's so many different aspects out there playing it. So we see improvement for air demand with customers, but very selected based on their inventory needs and based on the vertical and trades they're involved in.
Oh, it's positive at least that there's some kind of pockets of growth out there. And Marcus, yeah, obviously you've got kind of good perspective on the Asia Pacific market being based out in Singapore. Yeah, what's your kind of perspective on demand from Asia Pacific?
I mean, for Asia Pac, right? We all know that Asia Pac is the growth engine. It's the manufacturing factories for the world. And with the recent years' developments, there's a growing level of consumer increased within Asia Pac region. So true enough that Neil did mention that the GDP and the various demand outlook across the world is not fantastic. Agreed. But I do believe that Asia Pac are still growing. And if you can look at it in terms of freight rates itself, Europe to Asia, US to Asia, or Asia outbound in year 2023, Asia outbound still commands a higher yield as compared to our other regions coming in. It shows that Asia is still a growing or huge export countries to the world. Okay, and however, Asia Pac will not be different from a global trend, as it is still one of the major pillar of the foundation. So my take on this is that, you know, it will not be very much different from the global trending. However, it will still have an engine of growth as compared to the other region. Then in terms, yeah.
Sorry, Marcus,
Damien?
carry on.
That is the difference. Yeah, that's the difference for the Asia Pac itself. But in terms of capacities, you know, we need to break down into PAX and freighter, right? As what Neil was just highlighted, that some of our there is a revenge travel that happens last year, or in fact this year, and we do see that, you know, a lot of PAX or airlines start to mount passenger flights, but we do see that some of the major countries in APA has yet to really further open up the PAX capacity as well. If that is going to happen, that will further increase our capacity from the passenger sides to the world or even intra-Asia. As for the freighter capacities, it depends on the airline how it plans the route. And most of airlines will plan based on the maximum yield and load factor for the aircraft. Until date, at least for this year itself, we can see that, you know, Asia exports has been proven to be very resilient as compared to the rest as well. And the yield are generally higher, as I mentioned before.
Yeah. So yeah, a bit more capacity to come into the Asia Pacific market, perhaps next year as well. The geopolitical situation has obviously been having a big impact on the market over the last couple of years. Celine, given the kind of unpredictability in the market, how do you see air cargo companies adapting to that? And do you see them making further changes next year to kind of make sure they can kind of cope with that unpredictability?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Indeed, geopolitical confrontation is one of the most severe risks for businesses, as per the global risk report from the WEF. It's number 3 for businesses. We saw that with Russia, Ukraine, with the trade tensions between China and US, now with Middle East situation, and others. It does complexify the operations for the air cargo business in terms of lanes, in terms of boycotts of some companies, etc. So in terms of adaptability, airlines, freight forwarders, they know how to adapt their own operations and their markets. In terms of more long-term and you know, adapting to the coming uncertainties, what I can see is that year lots of reactions were actually very just defensive and reactive on the very short term. So putting on hold, freezing projects, freezing necessary transformation or investments as a first reaction to the current situation. Do I see it changing next year? I don't know. I hope that most of the companies will see the opportunity, even if it's uncertain and it's not easy to do in difficult times, but we'll see the opportunity to accelerate the transformation, accelerate the change in digital transformation, but as well as in really like finding the right business model, the right partnership model. And obviously the acceleration also of the sustainable transformation of the sector, because so that's lots of different dimensions that are feeding this uncertainty and fear for the future and for the sustainability of the business. Sustainability being the profitability of the business. So there are some movements in terms of new type of partnerships, like really looking also at the power of many, meaning really looking at not only the big guys but also the small medium-sized players and how to build on that force. So new type of partnership, and there are also quite a lot of new projects investing in new facilities, new products. Obviously, you mentioned also, Preben, the e-commerce push. So that's one reaction also from the industry.
Yeah, so kind of more close relationships throughout the supply chain to kind of mitigate that unpredictability.
Yeah, it's also redefining the definition of success in my opinion. So maybe it's not individual success, it's collective success. That's why it's the importance of partnerships and like alliance, all sort of alliance. That's how you optimize the use of your asset, you optimize your routes, you optimize your investment. So I think there is an opportunity here to really redefine what we mean by success for the sector.
Yeah, interesting. Even talking kind of about customers, yeah, we're also going to look at how customer demands have been changing. Yeah, what are your what are the trends in sort of what customers are asking for from you guys? How's that all developing?
Yeah, so let me break it down in four aspects. So there's one that will always remain the same in the past, and in the future, there's of course cost competitiveness. That is clear. What I'm seeing, one factor where we're seeing a difference in the weighing of the importance from the customer when they select a provider, that's regarding reliability. Because due to the COVID situation, a lot of customers got caught off guard by the severity of changed frequencies. Of course, the world was a different place, and that left a big vulnerability in the supply chains. If necessary, if you only, for instance, are moving on commercial aircraft, which is also the reason why Maersk entered the airspace love with the Maersk Air Cargo, because it's important to have a certain control of your supply chain. That doesn't mean you can control everything, but if you have your own flights, like the one we have in the background here, that creates at least an increased reliability to the supply chain. The world you can't control. There's so many external factors, but at least it gives a more reliable supply chain, that you have an element of your own flights. Like Maersk, for instance, up to now we have around plus 45 departures every week across Asia, North America, and Europe, and we keep that strengthening, maybe with some upgrades as well, because we believe that has spoken right for Maersk to exist in the space of air freight with the reliability factor. So that we're going to continue to it. Second point is what everybody is urgently for: frequency. Before COVID, you had the double daily, triple daily commercial frequency and freighters. The frequency has decreased quite dramatically. What we're seeing is transatlantic is more back to pre-COVID, but we still see Asia-Europe getting there. But Trans-Pacific, as also mentioned, is not there yet. So frequency is something what customers looking for. They don't want one or two departures. They want ideally daily, with a mixture, of course, of support behind that. And thirdly, which is a factor we see also enhancing from the customer, is speed. The consumers want things faster and faster. It doesn't necessarily be going to be air freighted, but we see solution design to a customer complex chains of solutions, where before maybe has to be done in over 2 months, has to be done in 1 week. So because the world is ever changing, we also see the customer asking for much more agility, hence also speed. So these three elements is something we're focusing a lot on to provide to the market. And due to our own flights, we have a more certainty element and reliability, and that's why we see a very successful market positioning with our Maersk Air Cargo.
Yeah, thanks, Preven. Interesting.
Can I?
Celine.
Yes, just on the like linking my previous statement with what Preben said on frequency, speed, agility. I think this is very much in line with we have to define new collaboration models, new way to deliver that service that the clients are expecting without just having a silo approach of like doubling capacity every single one of the players or doubling frequency, etc. But really finding the smart ways to offer that flexibility and agility without putting more assets in the air, I would say.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Yeah, just adding capacity when it could be kind of consolidated on a single flight or something between various customers. Neil, I know you guys have been looking at you kind of measure contracts length as a kind of indicator of the market. Yeah, how are air freight customers changing there? Are they contracts kind of ad hoc? Are they, is the spot market running things, or is it longer term deals people are looking for now?
Well, part of the market is changing and the other one is not, which is creating, I think, especially for freight forwarders, kind of a more risky environment than let's say this year or last year. So what we see, and when I talk about contract validity, I mean, in fact, price validity. And so how long is a price agreed between a shipper and a freight forwarder valid? About a year ago, we saw that maybe 50% of all the contracts that we have, so a lot of data points, had a validity of more than 6 months. That's now 70% and growing. And I believe that is due to more stability in the market. Prior to this call, we discussed, stability, boring, has its perks. I think with a more stable environment that we've seen for the last few months, allows freight forwarders and shippers to agree longer term rates. That's one. So we see that, and we see that growing. What we do not yet see is that the forwarders are also entering more longer term deals with airlines. We can pre-COVID, roughly 1/3, let's say, of the global volumes were bought on the short-term market, and we define short-term less than 1 month, price validity less than 1 month. During COVID, it went up to 50. We're still now around 45%. What we see of what the freight forwarders are procuring from the airlines has a rate that is valid for less than 1 month. Well, it doesn't take a lot of imagination, what kind of risk that poses to freight forwarders when you are selling long, 12 month, and you're procuring a large part of the capacity you need for your customer on the short-term market. And we really saw that happening a couple of months ago out of Vietnam, a market where even close to 60-70% of the volumes procured by the airlines have a short-term rate, so valid for less than 1 month. Where I had several calls with shippers stating, Neil, I got freight forwarders knocking on my door that they're no longer able to provide a service level at this cost. So that is going to be, I think, a tricky one for freight forwarders. What I expect that slowly but surely they'll be entering more, whether it's soft blocks or hard blocks with airlines to reduce their risk exposure with regard to the longer term deals. So I expect the shipper forwarder contracts to become on average longer and longer, and that the airline freight forwarder relationship would trail that.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Marcus, one of the kind of other big trends we've kind of been writing about in Air Cargo News and everyone's been talking about is nearshoring, reshoring, multi-sourcing, China plus one. Got lots of different names. They're all slightly different, obviously. Yeah, obviously that trend is going to have an impact in Asia Pacific. So yeah, is that something Maersk has noted, and is it widespread amongst your customers, or is it, just a few kind of customers with certain requirements?
I mean, on this point, right? Just want to share during majority of our customer discussions, those big ones, medium one as well. One of the major topic that often brought up in discussion was what was being elaborated on just now. The few question is how to ensure supply chains resilient for unforeseeable disruptions of events. Okay, be it whether COVID, be it whether lockdown, be it whether locking down factories within a certain district, so on and so forth. Okay, we do see that there is a certain level of noticeable level of diversifications of manufacturing sites to other Asia country, where customers are seeking to build more resiliency in their supply chain. And some of them literally, some of them choose to retain the manufacturing site within, for example, China is purely focusing on domestic demand, which itself is huge, right? However, even though we see a noticeable shift, China is still a manufacturing hub of the world. For example, that a customer might shift from China to Vietnam, or even China to Mexico, or even China to India for their assembly. However, we know where does all the raw materials come from as well. So in its way that it might be resilience, however, there's still the raw materials and the source of all the manufacturing stuff. Okay, will take time to diversify, though we still see the finishing goods itself that has been diversified outwards really to China plus one, China plus two, some even China plus three, right? That's what you shared or highlighted there.
Yeah. So initially, kind of, it actually creates more flying because people are having to move the raw materials around more until they kind of find new suppliers of raw materials in these new locations.
Yep, that's right.
Neil, I think you guys have looked at China plus one, reshoring, nearshoring. Yeah, have you got any kind of insights on that?
Well, let me ask you a question then, Damien. Who is the largest import partner for the United States at the moment? I'll give you four options: China, Japan, Germany, or Mexico.
Well, I'd go either China or Mexico. Probably Mexico, given all the issues they've been having on the border there recently as trucks are struggling to get through.
Just very recently, Mexico overtook indeed China. And I would not be surprised if their policy makes in the US, beating the drum. See, it works. We're becoming less dependent on China. But exactly what Mark has said, when you look under the surface, we can see major flows from China into Mexico, or from Vietnam into United States, but also from China into Vietnam. And I think the days of considering China to be a low-cost manufacturing country, they are long behind us. And so there's a lot of high-tech assembly taking place there, which you simply cannot just pick up. You cannot decide, I'm going to move, I'm going to manufacture my sweaters now somewhere else. This is high-tech, high-value, very complex supply chains. You cannot simply pick that up and put it into Guadalajara or Hanoi or Mumbai for that area. So I think if you look below the surface, the connectivity between China and I think in the US, especially on the high value goods, will remain intact for quite a while longer.
Yeah. One of the other kind of big topics is environment, and maybe with everything else going on in the world, that's it's not as prevalent in the news as it was maybe in the past. But yeah, Celine, do you think that environmental, and sustainability, probably more accurately, is kind of increasing in importance within air cargo, and do you think the industry is doing enough to meet those requirements?
So I would say finally it has been quite a while that we started that conversation more than 10 years ago, and it was not very high on the agenda for the industry. It was pushed by lots of big freight forwarders because themselves they were pushed by their own customers. It has now accelerated, meaning that it's now really getting on top of the agenda for the CEOs of companies, and this is really mainly due to the acceleration of the regulatory requirements, and especially in Europe with the CSRD coming into play very soon, and also in the US, some other markets. So when I say Europe, I also include the UK. So that's the UK and Switzerland, by the way. So that's the big Europe. So that's, we can see really that acceleration in terms of the importance on the agenda for the CEO on really the compliance side. And it's interesting to see that in the past, sustainability was a topic that was mainly driven by communication and marketing, and then it has moved to like the CFO agenda and the legal officer agenda, so it's really more on the compliance. What is really important now is to make sure that sustainability is embedded at every level of the company, because it's actually one of the selection criteria, and it's going to become more and more selection criteria for customers. So it has to be included in that. So very specifically, so you know, I use the broader term sustainability, but very specifically, concretely, the issue we have, the main issue we have in this industry is carbon. We have a hard to abate industry that is, as said, difficult to decarbonize. It's a long journey. Lots of commitments, long-term commitments, net zero by 2050 have been made, but there is a lack of trust today in terms of, is this industry really able to decarbonize as per their like very ambitious commitment? Do they have a roadmap? So that's the question at industry level that has to be answered at company level. Every single company now has to like show that they have a credible strategy to decarbonize and to reduce their waste and to improve their environmental footprint. And it's not the case right now. So it has accelerated. It's now on the agenda. We really need to have an extra push to have all companies having really a clear path, clear strategy, interim targets that are credible, because it's a matter of trust. And we need to then have concrete actions in place to decarbonize. And again, I'm referring back to what I said before. It's very much linked to partnership, new ways of doing business, the definition of success, optimizing the use of assets, using new technologies to have smarter operations. So that's so, and I'm like on purpose, I'm not even talking about the SAF, because this is like the big strategy for the aviation currently. But there is a lot of uncertainty. Talking again about uncertainty, there is a lot of uncertainty on the availability of SAF at levels that the aviation industry will need to really be net zero by 2050. So we need to hurry up, and every single company in the sector needs to hurry up to define their own sustainability strategy and really act and already give some concrete improvement in year on year. So that's something that on my side I'm doing with my clients. I'm also doing through TIACA with the sustainability roadmap and the Blue Sky program that I've developed on behalf of TIACA. But I'm also helping individual companies to define their strategy and to really have concrete actions that they can already worked on today.
Yeah, and interesting. As you say, SAF is a whole webinar in itself, I think.
Yeah.
Preben, perhaps you could kind of give us a bit of perspective of customer demands. Is that something that is environment becoming more of a concern? What's Maersk doing around reducing CO2 emissions? It's obviously a tough one for cargo companies.
Thank you, Celine, for that update. That was very enlightening. As we definitely also seeing a clear increased interest over the last 12 to 18 months from customers regarding this matter. Yeah. So before, let's say, you're having a discussion with multinational company, maybe 25%, I would say, would bring it up. Now it's 2/3 to 75%. So it's becoming a much more importance within the customer on C-level as well, which is critical for this to transform. So that is positive. We are also seeing a trend that more companies are starting, beside what I mentioned before, with price, reliability, starting to include this also as an element of selection of the provider for the freight. They don't yet use it that much, but it's coming. And we're seeing a lot of companies where before said, no, that's not important. It has turned important overnight. So we are seeing that increase of interest as very strengthening across vertical, especially high value verticals, like pharmaceuticals as an example, and technology, where lower, let's say, value are less. But it's a journey and it's quite natural. There are also, Celine said, concerns, and that is that the price of SAF is not sustainable to bear from a customer point of view, unless it's very high value, or for a forwarder point of view. Second is the availability. I will echo that. That is also a challenge, and we really need to look at things as an industry quite different. Furthermore, also, there's been a lot of focus in the last 6-9 months from regulators. How do you prove you are doing the right thing and not? So that is also greenwashing has come up. / regulator. There's much more concern now from a customer. Is it really solid from a legal point of view? Which is positive because that's a part of the journey. It's a very so there are a lot of movement pieces, but essentially the customer is having fundamental higher increased interest. It hasn't yet turned into, okay, now it's going to be fantastic because there are limitations. So what we're doing a lot within Maersk, of course, also is improving the transparency of the emission is key. Yeah, discussing openly. There are obstructions. That's not easy. What is the price level instead of, let's say, put it at the last end of a negotiation. So it's been more transparently happening and continuously updating and educating what is happening in the industry, because changes has to happen. If it goes like this, I am not so optimistic. There has to be more game changers. And then, of course, how do we co-create, collaborate across industries, customers, regulatory bodies? It's not a certain part of the market like freight forwarders or only customers or only EU. It's really a collaborative global collaboration has to happen to really fast track this. So the positive is the demand is increasing and we're seeing also more customer joining it, but it's not in the speed yet as it should be to fulfill various ambition plan, which I think we all want to deliver.
Yeah. So something that's definitely grown in importance by the sound of it. Neil, I know you touched on this kind of earlier, but the impact of ocean shipping performance on the market. I know that's something you kind of looked at. You've looked at in a bit more detail. See the liner consortiums are coming to an end next year. Do you think that is, well, sorry, in Europe, they're not going to have as much freedom to build those alliances? Do you is that something that you think is going to have a big impact on on air freight?
Well, I think the jury is still out on that one, how it's going to pan out. Not sure how often we use the word uncertainty already in this brief conversation, but there's another one for you. To steer the pot a little bit, if I look back at my last 18 months at Xeneta, I think that ocean reliability is more important to demand for air freight than GDP next year. Because if that becomes messy and the shippers can no longer trust the ocean liners, there will be a boost for air freight. And to put into perspective, what is it? Roughly 97% of global volumes moved by ocean, just 3 by air. Let's say that those volumes do not change next year. But if it becomes just 96.7% by ocean, which is drop in the ocean for the ocean carriers, they would hardly notice that. But if the share of air freight increases from 3% to 3.3 because the shippers cannot trust it, that's a 10% growth in volume. So I think that's why we keep such a close eye on ocean reliability, and whether that's due to the Panama Canal or strikes, or the block exemption not being prolonged, because it could have a lot of impact on air freight demand. And we've seen a very strong correlation between ocean reliability going down and air freight rates going up, and the reverse. So there's a very strong negative correlation between those two on either Asia Pac to Europe, but also Trans-Pacific and North Atlantic.
Yeah, I've heard some interesting stats of, I can't remember what they are, but 1% change in ocean volumes to air freight can have a huge impact on the market. We've got some questions coming in, so I think maybe we'll kind of try and tackle a few of those, and then we can come back to our kind of questions later if we have time. So don't forget, you can use the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen. If you click on that, and then you can just ask some questions. We have one question, which I think we haven't touched on too much actually, which is a good point. The impact of e-commerce on the market. We can see huge disturbances in the market due to e-commerce. Some say taking up to 70% of capacities out of China. We've been writing quite a lot actually. The rates improve in recent weeks. A lot of people have been putting that down to, amongst other things, obviously, e-commerce. Marcus, obviously, Asia Pacific's where a lot of the e-commerce comes from. Do you want to take that one? Do you think what sort of impact do you think e-commerce is going to have on the market next year?
I mean, before I touch on next year, right? I mean, Christopher was somehow well informed and right as well. It's not, we do see a huge e-commerce upsurge, right? In mainly China, and also potentially causing an impact to some of the North Asia country. And sooner or later, it will just impact the Southeast Asia as well that we are seeing. Okay, the rates has jumped, I would say, easily 200% for the Trans-Pacific, and also to Europe as well. And in fact, majority of the major freight forwarders are dealing with or handling e-commerce business. And those 3 big e-commerce giants in China, they are still asking for more capacities because of their commitments to the end consumer. As you know, Maersk Cargo, we fly our own flights, our own planes. Okay, well, we do have pretty much dealing or pretty much flight operations operating for this customer as well. So yes, it is causing quite a huge upsurged, especially up from China and Northeast Asia. And for next year, and it depends, it's always up and down, right? Depending on the e-commerce search as well. Based on projections, we are looking at easily this thing could last through Christmas, or depending on how you see it, potentially through maybe before Chinese New Year as well. But subsequently, once the demands drop, once the festive season is over, we don't see much of a huge rush for e-commerce. And having to say that, right, one of the things that, e-commerce company, as we all know, early part of this year or even mid part of this year, they are starting to plan for their capacities for the huge launch, especially for now. Okay, unfortunately, there's the expectations that is not planned fantastically well, which results to huge surge in spot rates market now. So it's a supply and demand thing. And having to say that again, if next year the demand drop for e-commerce, a lot of people are not buying, as the initial part of our discussions that, as Neil was saying, that the whole entire, macroeconomics is not fantastic. So we should see some normalizations after this year.
Okay.
Damien, could I ask a question to Marcus? Because you're even closer to the, or you're closer to the market, I am Marcus. What I don't understand, because the two names that keep popping up, Shein, Temu, big e-commerce firms, I don't get it, how they can afford to buy expensive air freight relative to ocean for the low value goods that they're moving. How sustainable is that? I can't get my head around that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to some of the bosses from these two companies, right? As in, for example, okay, Shein's, right? If you look at it, their whole I would say line of business is selling relatively affordable apparel, clothing, okay, and they're selling in bulk, huge bulk, right? So in terms of a charter, a 747, and the amount of freight that they're able to load on that is actually minute if we were to divide into one piece, two pieces. So that is their model, and they got to move it fast. And for other e-commerce as well, is because that they have a customer commitment to the end consignee with 5 days, 7 days, 8 days, depending on where it is. So they need to make the customer commitment here. That's why majority of the shipments is flying via air freight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marcus. Next question touches on kind of global warming, I guess. And Preben, perhaps this is one you could answer, given Maersk's kind of cross-modal presence. Yeah, obviously this year we've seen the low levels of water in the Panama Canal have an impact on shipping, and the person's asking whether that will translate, if it continues, I guess, whether that will translate into extra volumes for air as people kind of try to get around that.
Very, very, very good and very relevant question, and maybe Neil also can help me after, because there's also more, let's say, broader prospect. But in general, when we looked at it so far, with what it's causing now, no, not much, if any. Of course, it depends on the severity. Yeah, but so far we haven't seen it. But the severity of it, of course, can change that. That is so far the analysis we're having. So no, not so much now, but it depends, of course. A full closure is a total different ball game. But time will show. Hopefully, we don't come to that.
Yeah, maybe I can add a little bit to that. Well, ocean is not my my expertise, but I have a few colleagues, and my colleague Peter Sand, also based in Copenhagen, he let me know that you can trade slots on the Panama Canal, to jump the queue, and there was a public register on how much money was being paid. There was hundreds of thousands of dollars to jump the queue. What we've so far seen is that the reduced capacity, they've been given preference to the container ships, which is the stuff that potentially could go by air. So the impact has been minimal so far. We also see that there was a lot of container ships going to East Coast US because of issues on the West Coast. And for that, the Panama Canal is, of course, key. But we see now flows returning back to the West Coast again, which makes the Panama Canal less of a bottleneck. But it is one to watch out. And I think I read yesterday that they expect this reduced capacity in Panama to continue for years to come. It's not just drought. There's more going on there. But yeah, it wouldn't take much for it to cause a bottleneck, I think. But at the moment, I would have to give you, Preben, that there's been very, very limited impact.
Celine, you've got something to...
Yeah, I'd like to just maybe extend the question. That's a risk management question. And if we look broader outside of just the Panama Canal issue, we have to, and every single company in this sector has to do its own risk management and risk assessment from the impact of climate change on the operations, because we will have more and more disruptions of the chain, by air, road, or air, based from climate change events, from heat waves, from floods, from it's going to accelerate also, and it has to be embedded into the strategy, the network routing, again, the partnership with other companies, etc., to adapt and to be resilient against the climate change impacts.
Yeah, it's going to be, could have a huge impact, isn't it? Celine, while you're talking, we've got another question on SAF. I think they're asking, when do we think the price of SAF fuel will go down? They point out that forwarders are committing more and more to SAF on a yearly basis, but customers want to know what the impact on air freight per kilogram will be. So do you see kind of the momentum, what momentum there is behind people actually buying SAF? Do you think that will bring the price down?
I don't think the issue is today really with the price, given the anecdotal amount of SAF that we have. So I would say it's a wrong debate. I understand the debate, and I understand that lots of people want to talk about price and who is going to pay for the surcharge and blah, blah, blah. But actually, this is not really what we have in front of us. So the main challenge really is the scalability and the availability of SAF and the real sustainability within the SAF production. So until we have enough SAF plants, spread all around the world and enough volumes, it's going to be anecdotal anyway. So it's not the price is not going to change anything. So I don't want to dismiss that, but it's not yet the question, in my opinion.
Yeah. We were going to touch on technology as well, and there's actually a question come through on technology. Marcus, perhaps you could take a look at this one. How does the panel see AI impacting freight forwarding, aerospace, and how customers may interact differently in the future? I think AI is going to have a big impact on air cargo. It's kind of, one of the buzzwords at the moment.
Oh, it is. I mean, before I touch on air, right? Because allow me to just because this change of technologies, right? Maersk, it actually changes how Maersk is going to approach the market. When I say Maersk, meaning that it's not just for air, because we are really embarking on the integrated logistic journey. Okay, and in fact, Maersk, because of the technologies, right, we are developing the integrated supply chain engine platform. Let us go back, like, be it whether 5 or even 10 years ago, there is no such kind of hype words of AI and so on and so forth. It's not so prominent, right? Whenever that we go to the customer meetings, or customers actually requested us to support them to design their supply chain, optimize their supply chain, so on and so forth, you know, we will get a consultant in, look at all the data available, look at all the trendings, and we'll propose to customers on their supply chain, NOP, flows, air freight, ocean, rail, whatever not, right? But with AI technologies, with all this so-called artificial intelligence, that actually changed the whole world, the whole approach of supply chain. And we hope that this will change and this will lead our integrated logistic journey as well. So for this integrated supply chain engine, all right, that will be the core of our integrated 2023 vision that offers the world-class solution, providing comprehensive visibility across all transportation network, allows predictivity, recommendation of supply chain optimization, and most importantly of all, right, that will have the capability, because of the AI technologies, that will also translate in the air freight as well, to convert recommendation into action across all end-to-end supply chain to our Maersk customer. Again, this is in the midst of the development. So that will help to literally change the whole supply chain landscape with the increase in the technology or advancements in the technology arena here.
Yeah, we've
right.
got
Hopefully that. Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. And we've got a bit of a kind of quick follow-up question on there. Someone else has asked whether AI can help with profitability, and also allow smaller operators to disrupt the big operators. Yeah, Marcus, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that kind of side of it as well.
Okay. Being a forwarder for a good 15 to 20 years, right? And for so many years we have heard this saying that, you know, nobody has a crystal ball on what will be the cost or what will be the rates in next year or 6 months, right? So yes, I mean, I sincerely hope that AI is able to predict such analysis that brings to air cargo operator. However, we still got to really, you know, look into other unforeseeable circumstances where that might cause us a upsurge in rates or drop in rates as well. So yes, I would say that it might predict a good trending, but I have my doubt that it will be able to be, or at least on my lifetime, to see that, you know, really map out accurately on the future changes. If that's going to happen, we are all going to lose our job here.
No. No, I disagree with you on that one, Marcus. I hope we will see more innovation using AI, but the smart way, giving us more time to focus on really different type of added value job, and more like really being customer centric. In my opinion, AI is just like the next digital transformation revolution, compared to like 15 years ago when we were discussing about messaging, like, or even longer. So, you know, the world is transforming, the world is adapting. There is no reason why our sector would not tap into the opportunities. Every opportunity comes with risks that needs to be assessed and mitigated. For me, the main risks are like to be left behind. And if we don't adopt those technology with with the smart approach, or if we don't like do it the right way, then we feel also we have the risk also of more cyber attacks, because we are going to be more vulnerable. So, but apart from that, I think there are so many great opportunities, and also for the smaller players to be stronger on the market with new tools at their disposal. So I'm more positive than you, and I really hope we will see that in my lifetime.
Okay, well, I think
Yes, same here.
I think we're up to our hour there. So as that's a nice positive note to end on, I think we'll wind up there, unless any of the panelists have any kind of final remarks they wanted to make on anything we've discussed. Nope, looks like we're
happy to start. Just to conclude, thank you for the opportunity. And it's true that 2023 was a bit gloomy in my point of view. I hope 2024 is going to be better, but I really hope as well it's going to not stop companies in the sector to really look at how to be better, how to transform their operations, transform their business model, transform their mindset, and really accelerate sustainability. It's highly demanded. Do not waste any time to start or to really speed up on that. Because otherwise, in a few years' time, you are going to be left behind, just like digital transformation when it started. So just go ahead and voila. Have a happy Happy New Year.
yeah, great, perfect. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you to all our panelists for their time. It's much appreciated, and yeah, we've kind of got through a lot of big subjects there, so it's been an interesting talk. So thanks everyone, and yeah, we'll find out what happens. We'll find out in a few months how 2024 goes. So thanks everyone for your time, and yeah, see you soon.
Thank you, Damien. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.